Hey, what's up YouTube? It's ICU, and this morning Apple has released iOS 10.1 ahead of this Thursday's Mac event. Now this is an awesome release for a number of reasons, all of which we're going to get into in today's video. First though, be sure to give it a huge thumbs up because I am trying my best to bring back my iPhone 7 giveaways after having given 2 of them away already. Also, be sure to click that subscribe button below next to my channel name to ensure that you don't miss out anytime I cover anything related to jailbreaking, including when I release my brand new jailbreak tutorials. Because as stated in the title of this video, this is merely a status update. We're going to talk about jailbreaking, how iOS 10.1 will play a role in the release of the next jailbreak, and all of the features and changes found in 10.1. So if there are specific section or sections that most interest you, down below in the description there is actually a table of contents that will allow you to skip to the specific one or ones. Alright, so let's go ahead and get straight into this first of all by opening up Safari and navigating to Apple's Developer Center, which is actually good for a number of reasons beyond just showing us what the latest beta releases are, because beneath the featured downloads, as you can see the latest betas right here, we have what Apple deems as their release software section. So these are the current public versions of various things including Xcode, macOS, iOS, tvOS, macOS Server, and watchOS. But as you can see for iOS, we have iOS 10.1 as being the latest firmware, and we have it issued on today's date, October 24th, 2016. You can see that right beneath the build number there. So guys, iOS 10.1 is finally available to the public after 5 beta seeds. And you might be wondering, well, why did it actually require 5 beta releases? What changes does iOS 10.1 have to offer, and what does it bring to the table? So I'm going to switch on over to my iPhone 5S here. We are on the software updates section just inside of settings, general software update, and I apologize, I would have brought over my iPhone 6S or 6, but this was the only device that was charged at the time of 10.1's release. But as you can see, for the changelog, it states, quote, "This update includes portrait camera for iPhone 7 Plus, beta, transit directions for Japan, stability improvements, and bug fixes." So overall, guys, this is a much more stable version of iOS 10. We're going to be talking about that in just a second, but first, the absolute main thing that iOS 10.1 was issued for is the portrait camera feature found on the iPhone 7 Plus models, because of course, as I'm sure the majority of you are well aware at this point, they do have 2 camera lenses, one wide angle, one telephoto, to create a really awesome effect now that this portrait camera mode is active and is live and available to the public. Of course, the feature still has the beta tagline associated with it, but now the public can test it on their iPhone 7 Plus models. And let me tell you how it works and what this brand new feature actually does. So essentially, it takes a picture, one with each camera lens, and it kind of compares the 2 images using some advanced software and some tricky algorithms. It's able to create or generate a 9-layer depth map, so that way it can tell how far away or how close things are to the main subject of an image and blur things out accordingly. So let me show you guys exactly what I mean just inside of the Photos app. I have a couple of examples here. The first one is just a sunflower, and as you can see, this is the main subject of the image, the sunflower, right? So we want to blur out the background and we want to achieve that higher quality depth of field, more DSLR-like feel in this image. Well, that's where this portrait camera feature comes in, because as you can see, the background is now blurred. Now it's not 100% perfect yet. You can see there is kind of a halo effect around some of the edges. This is definitely best for people as the main portrait, but in my opinion, it works very well, and I can't wait to see how well Apple actually improves this feature moving forward into the future, and once they finally remove that beta tagline associated with it. Now, this image is a much better example, because as you can see, we of course have the background in clear view here, but when we go ahead and switch on over to the depth effect activated, which by the way, you do get a little badge letting you know when the depth effect is turned on, you can tell that now the background is definitely blurred out and we don't have any of the edges to worry about that could kind of let that halo effect shine through. And if you don't know what I mean by that, let me try to get a close-up of this. You can see the shoot off the stem here with the leaf is actually a little bit blurry. That's because it was having a hard time determining that that was the main subject. So it works best on things with less edges. As you can see here, just this very simple image of some leaves on the ground. The background is blurred and it looks very good. That was just a really quick example though. All right, so that's the main thing that iOS 10.1 actually offers over iOS 10.0.3, the latest firmware for the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus, and now iOS 10.1 is the unifying firmware between all iOS 10-based devices, because of course, as I'm sure the majority of you are also aware, Apple released iOS 10.0.3 last week to actually address a cellular connectivity issue that iPhone 7 and 7 Plus owners were experiencing. So that firmware is only issued for those two devices, and all other devices were on iOS 10.0.2. Now 10.1 addresses that. All devices have the same firmware as the latest public firmware now with iOS 10.1, and that makes things substantially better from a jailbreak standpoint, guys. We're going to get into that in just a second, but remember iOS 10.1 also has fixes for non-iPhone 7 Plus devices, including transit directions for Japan, and of course the big thing here, guys, stability improvements and bug fixes. That is absolutely key when talking about a jailbreak and releasing a jailbreak to the public. Now let's kind of get into what we can expect from jailbreaking moving forward, because as I'm sure most of you who watch my videos know, I've said that Pangu is most likely waiting for iOS 10.1 to be released before dropping the next jailbreak in general and the first jailbreak for iOS 10. However, as sort of a disclaimer, I do need to mention right now before we get into it any further that of course things can always change. I've said this in practically every single video I've released talking about jailbreaking. Things are heavily contingent upon Apple, what they do with iOS. For instance, Apple could release a new beta firmware, that could set things back, or if they don't release a new beta firmware, that takes things in an entirely different direction. So again, jailbreak development is heavily contingent upon what Apple does, and iOS 10.1 does seem to be the most likely candidate for a new jailbreak. But remember, there are always unforeseen things that pop up, and the jailbreak situation is dynamic, never static, meaning it is always in flux and things change. So the best that I can do as an observer and as a jailbreak analyst is to kind of break down the situation and analyze it as it progresses and unfolds, and kind of go from what we have seen in the past, which is what we're going to talk about right now. See, let's rewind the clock a little bit to last year, 2015, and the first iOS 9 jailbreak. Now, iOS 9 itself, being iOS 9.0, was released to the masses on September 16th, 2015, but that wasn't deemed as being stable enough, and Pangu wasn't ready to release a jailbreak for the first installment of iOS 9. Instead, we did receive a jailbreak for iOS 9.0.2, but get this, 9.0.2 was released on September 30th, 2015, and the first jailbreak for the firmware was released on October 14th, 2015, literally 2 weeks later. And if we compare this date from when iOS 9 was released in general, remember I said that was September 16th, 2015. That is less than a month later, guys. That is absolutely crazy. Now, it has been a little bit over a month since iOS 10 was released to the public. And if we go back even further, another year, this exact same type of pattern still exists, being that Pangu is the first one to release an iOS 8 jailbreak, and it came about 1 month after the initial release of iOS 8. And guys, when a new firmware is released, that jailbreak developers do intend to target, in this case, again, likely being today's iOS 10.1 release, jailbreak developers do like to wait between 1 to 2 weeks before issuing a utility capable of jailbreaking the firmware. Now, guys, remember that is what has happened in the past, and that is likely what will happen in the future. These patterns tend to repeat themselves as we've seen in years past. Again, it pretty much works like clockwork. Hopefully, we can expect the exact same thing this time around, meaning that we may get a jailbreak between 1 to 2 weeks from now, unless any unforeseen complications come up that delay the jailbreak's release further, though that likely will not happen. But in the unlikely scenario that it does, I will keep you fully updated along the way. Keep that in mind. Remember, guys, Pangu is the main team on the jailbreak scene right now, and if you happen to come across any video or articles online claiming that there's a new jailbreak that's not released by Pangu, or that it even is but it's not on Pangu's official website, then I can guarantee you right now that it is fake. If there is a new jailbreak, I will be the first to let you guys know. I'm going to have my video coverage out on it immediately, so a really good thing that you can do to kind of see what's happening, whether a jailbreak is official or not, is to just come to my channel. If I've released a video on it, then you know it is legit. If I haven't, then it's not. I can't tell you how many questions I receive from individuals asking me whether a certain jailbreak is official or not, and every single time it's not. Guys, when there is a new jailbreak, I'm going to be very vocal about it and release a number of new videos. Speaking of which, I will also have a link down below in the description to my iOS 10 through 10.1 Jailbreak Update playlist, which contains complete information on everything you need to know related to the current jailbreak status. That way, if you're watching this video in the future and you have any questions or concerns, or you want to see what the current situation and status of the jailbreak is, then definitely check out that link again below in the description. That way you will be fully caught up on everything. Newest videos are of course on the top. All right, now before we wrap up today's video, let's quickly tackle whether you should update to iOS 10.1, specifically if you are interested in jailbreaking. So we are here on Apple's security updates page. Let's go ahead and scroll down a little bit, and you will notice that when we actually tap on iOS 10.1, again, the latest release as of recording today's video, that there are in fact security changes for iOS 10.1. However, most of these, except the ones affecting the kernel, do not appear to be applicable to releasing new jailbreak utilities. They are officially closed now in iOS 10.1, so the best thing for you guys to do is to just stay on whichever firmware you're on unless you feel 100% confident in updating to iOS 10.1. Because I will say this, if Pangu were to release a jailbreak pre-iOS 10.1, meaning for iOS 10.0.2 and 10.0.3, then they likely would have already have done it, because of course they have had 5 beta firmwares now to actively test the tool that they are working on and that is in development. If they had discovered that any of the beta releases had patched any of the vulnerabilities that they were planning on exploiting in a jailbreak tool, then they would have rushed it for an immediate release. The chances of these security fixes actually happening between the 5th beta and now are virtually slim to none, because iOS 10.1 beta 5 for the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus can technically be considered the GM or Gold Master seed, being that it was the finalized version intended for public release. Because if we go ahead and switch on over here on the iPhone 7 Plus to settings, general software update, you will notice that it says iOS 10.1, your software is up to date. Now I haven't updated since iOS 10.1 beta 5 is out, and of course iOS 10.1 over-the-air updates are already being pushed because we have it here on this iPhone 5C, guys. That means that last week's beta was already up to date. Pangu has no doubt tested iOS 10.1 beta 5 extensively. However, I always recommend staying on the lowest version of iOS possible. So if you're not experiencing any massive usability bugs that you think 10.1 could address, because remember, it does include stability and bug fixes, then you can just stay on iOS 10.0.2, because unless you have an iPhone 7 Plus, you don't get any new features really. But for me personally, I'm going to be updating to iOS 10.1. Now, in the unlikely scenario that a jailbreak is released and it doesn't cover iOS 10.1, I do not want you guys to be left out. So definitely just make the decision that you guys feel comfortable with. I've given you all the info that you need to accurately make that decision yourselves. Again, I do not foresee a jailbreak being released that doesn't include support for iOS 10.1. If that were the case, it already would have happened. But I just want to let you guys know that you should err on the side of caution if you want to 100% guarantee your ability to be able to jailbreak your devices. All right, that wraps up everything I want to talk about in today's video. Remember, I'm going to keep you guys fully in the loop as we move forward and as the situation progresses. Be sure to click the subscribe button if you have yet to, and just be sure to like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter for even more frequent updates. Also, stay tuned. I may announce new giveaways in the future, and I will have full coverage on Apple's October media event. Again, check out my channel this Thursday or my coverage if you're watching this video at a later date. And until next time, this is ICU signing out. Join the iCrackUriDevice community on Patreon to help out the channel and to be featured in videos similar to these top contributors. Click the link on your screens now if you're on desktop, or check below.